Bonjour tout le monde. Hi everyone. This is Guy Giard from Montreal, a life coach and author of the Courage to Love. Today's reading is dedicated to Dominic. Dominic, a co-worker who inspired me to go on my first clown trip, which changed my life. So thank you, Dominic, for being there and for all friendships around the world. Friendship does change the world. So where we left off, I was 4 years old. We were in the backyard. It was the summer heat wave, and my brothers and my sister, we were playing together. I just had scraped my knees. So, like countless families of the 1950s, we moved from a small farming community called St. Hyacinthe on the banks of the Yamaska River, a tributary of the St. Lawrence. The country road to our barns still carried the family name, Giard, to this day. My father, who was born in 1929, came from a long line of dairy farmers. He had numerous brothers and sisters, 12 in all, and like me, he was the baby of the family. Sadly, though, he lost his mom when he was very young, so his older sisters raised him. Even so, at a very early age, he learned to fend for himself. He grew up pitching hay, working the soil, and milking cows. Life is about work, very hard work, he always said. He once shared a story with me about how he discovered his life's calling. When I was 8 years old, I was riding along with my brother, bouncing on the tractor seat as he tilled the land. We were hard at work under the scorching midday sun. I felt nails poking my sunburned back as sweat poured down my brow. And I thought to myself, this isn't going to be my life. Right there and then, I decided to become a doctor. His eyes twinkled as he recalled with wistful dismay that his decision meant he had to leave the farm and his family and move to the city. However, that didn't happen until many years later. My older brothers and sister lived their earliest years in St. Hyacinthe, but after I came into this world in 1959, we moved to Montreal. My mother's story hardly fared any better. She was born in 1931, when most families were still caught up in the tidal waves of poverty during the Great Depression. Such was the case for her father, a jack of all trades. With no work and no income, he decided to pack up and move his family out west in search of a better life. Promises of work fell through, which was followed by even bigger failures. So mother's family was constantly on the move after being evicted over and over again. Grandma sewed their already tattered clothes as they tried their best to fight the bone-chilling winters. But they often went to bed hungry without having eaten for days. When my mother was 8 years old, her older brother was sent overseas when Canada declared war on Germany and World War II erupted. Cold, hungry, and missing their older brothers, the younger children were told to keep quiet because crying and whining wouldn't achieve anything. With no income, no roof, and no food, my mother's family painfully made their journey back to Quebec more impoverished than before. They settled in Saint Rose, a small village to the west of Montreal, about an hour from where my father grew up. My mother's family got by on her father's meager earning from his job as a taxi driver and sawmill worker. But their strife wasn't yet over. On April 1st, 1944, screams of fire, fire, fire tore through the quiet night. Jumping out of bed, my mother and her many sisters stumbled outside in their nightgown. Standing barefoot in the snow, My mother and her family shivered in the cold as they watched their home disappear in a fiery blaze. Once again, they lost everything. In an effort to help out her family, my mother became a nurse at the local hospital, taking care of premature babies. I can only guess that this is how destiny brought my parents together because they never talked about it. I still have a souvenir matchbox with a photo of them on its flap from their honeymoon. My father was in France for his studies, so my mom joined him in Paris for a few days. She radiated with happiness in her beautiful white dress, while my father, with his Clark Gable-esque razor mustache, was the image of elegance. I cherish this image of their love. I imagine that they met in the corridors of the hospital and started dating. Within a year, they were married. A year later, my sister Mimi was born, followed Luke and then Mark. There were two adults and three babies, all living in a tiny apartment in St. Hyacinth. Dad was working hard as a medical resident, so mom struggled to keep them all clothed and fed. When I was born, my mother almost bled to death. After that, returning home to an already too small apartment became unlivable for the six of us. When my father decided to specialize in neurology, my parents uprooted us from our extended family and moved us to the big city of Montreal. Isolated and missing the support of her sisters and parents, my mother worked to the point of exhaustion. Finally, her 16-year-old niece moved in to provide some help, but after 3 months, she left unexpectedly, leaving my mom to fend for all of four us children yet again. Even so, I never heard mom complain. Instead, she simply said, "That is the past. There was no point talking about it." By the time I was 6 years old, my father was a full-fledged neurologist. My father was moving up in the world, so we left Hochelaga for Outremont, an upscale neighborhood for professionals that offered single-family houses, manicured lawns, and large, gorgeous public parks. Although our surroundings had improved, the few friends I'd made in Hochelaga were left behind. In addition, my parents decided to send me to public school while most of the kids in our neighborhoods attended private schools. I was a stranger in a strange land. Needless to say, I struggled to make friends. When I was in second grade, my teacher decided that it would be simply hilarious to Italianize my name. "Hey, Giardini, come over here," he'd order me in a mocking voice that was a very sly insult, revealing his racist views about working class Italians. The whole class laughed. It hurt. But I didn't say anything because I didn't know how to stick up for myself. Immobilized with embarrassment, I simply stared at the papers on my desk. During recess, my classmates further humiliated me by calling me "Giardini, Giardini," while pelting me with the ball over and over again while playing dodgeball. To avoid their taunts, I exiled myself to the most remote corner of the schoolyard. Uprooted and raised without grandparents, uncle, aunts, or cousins, no one was there to protect me from the constant assaults of Batman, the Joker, the bullies at school. I learned from Dad that life was hard work, and Mom taught me that being quiet was the answer to being hurt. Neither country born nor city dweller, neither working class nor professional, I was an outsider lost in an arid no man's land, that the one that was divided east and west Berlin. Even Taffy, my only true friend, jumped over the wall and escaped, never to be seen again, leaving me alone in my barren desert of solitude.